national conversation about the legality of federal agents, particularly ICE agents covering their faces during enforcement operations. But what many people don't realize is that South Carolina has a much older law on the books that actually makes it illegal for civilians to conceal their identities in public under certain circumstances. We're joined right now by attorney Allie Menegakis with the Clekis law firm to give some legal perspective on these rules. Good morning to you and welcome back.
Good morning. Great to be here, Emily.
Great to have you here today. Okay, let's first start with this first question here. Are there laws that allow or prevent law enforcement agents from covering up their faces? Tell us about that.
You know, it's interesting because right now there are not laws. And when I say laws, I mean statutes that have been passed by legislators that forbid law enforcement agents from covering their faces or their identities. However, historically, it's been very, very rare that law enforcement, whether federal agents or local law enforcement, actually do conceal their identities, especially in the way that ICE has been doing that really in public during daylight. However, many law enforcement agencies, including almost all that we have locally in the Lowcountry area, do have policies and procedures that require their law enforcement agents to not conceal their identities, to actually make an effort to show that they are with law enforcement, have their name there and not cover their faces. So there's been a push on, there's one law that they're looking to pass federally and then one in California to require agents to actually be transparent and show their identity and not conceal themselves. But right now there isn't any.
Interesting. Okay, what about civilians? Because there is a law that pertains to civilians, right? Can you tell us what that means for us and the origins of that as well?
Absolutely. So South Carolina, like many states, have many old laws on the books that are just still there. This is actually one of them. So we have a mask law in South Carolina that basically says that you cannot wear a mask. You cannot cover your face, except in certain exceptions, and they're very few. For example, in the work that you're doing, or if it's a costume on Halloween, etc. But this law was actually passed originally in the 50s and 60s, and the point was to address a specific concern of intimidation by the KKK, actually, because they were wearing hoods, concealing their identities, performing acts of intimidation and many times violence and murder. And so that was really targeted at them at that point. And we haven't really seen that law really implemented in terms of arresting people since that time. And the few times we have seen it in recent years, really in the last decade or so, at least in the Lowcountry, the ironic thing is that it's been disproportionately applied and used against young black men. So real irony there that it was meant to protect really African Americans and now is really used disproportionately. One thing that I find really interesting that I haven't seen yet, that we just saw this past month, was that now it's being used and applied, at least by the City of Charleston Police Department, against activists, people that are exercising their First Amendment rights. So there was a young woman that was arrested in Marion Square last month for covering her face with a scarf. Now, mind you, it was cold at that time, but that ordinance, at least the local ordinance, doesn't have an exception for weather. So I think that the law is really ripe for review, both on the local level and the state level.
I'm sure during the pandemic that complicated things as well. So does this impact our First Amendment rights or free speech, things like that?
Many legal scholars believe that it does. We not only have a right to free speech, but we have a right, believe it or not, to anonymous speech. And many people wouldn't be surprised at that because maybe the profession that you're in or the work that you're in, especially in this very polarized political climate, expressing yourself could make you lose your job. You could potentially be doxxed. And the irony here is that that is really the argument that law enforcement and ICE is using, is to cover their faces because they're concerned for their safety and their family safety, where you have a fundamental right to First Amendment speech, yet you're not afforded the same guarantees, versus law enforcement, which is not, working as an ICE agent is not a fundamental right, but something that you choose to do. So really you look at the different levels, the constitutionality of the rights, what is Trump's public safety or personal safety, privacy concerns, is it these fundamental rights? And I think that that's what the courts are going to start reviewing when these laws get challenged soon.
Yeah, definitely complicated topic. Of course, people have questions about this because, like you said, this is impacting people locally. They can come to you guys at Clekis Law Firm to help answer those questions. Of course, give that legal perspective. You can go to Clekis.com or call that number 843-9-MILLION to learn more about this topic and any other legal topic. Allie, thank you so much.
A pleasure.
Let the power of 9 million work for you.